Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark drought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So, Josh, I'm loving seeing you sitting in what I think is your sukkah. Um, of course, we are in Sukkot, which is Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy, fullness of joy. And at this time, we're commanded for joy. And I'm going to share, Josh, because I see you sitting in your sukkah. My husband usually builds us a sukkah every year. And this year, when it was time to build our sukkah, he was out of town. So I attempted to do it and I failed gloriously. Um, which is why I'm not sitting in my sukkah. Um, so I invite that into the attempt. So we are commanded for joy at this time of year, and Nachman of Breslov taught us that it's a great mitzvah to always be happy and to make every effort to determinedly keep depression and gloom at bay. That's a high bar. And those words coming from someone else might be really difficult to hear. But if you know that Nachman of Breslov himself suffered from depression, I think it was his own prescription toward himself to aspire to allow that joy to come in when it was knocking at the guest house door. And to always be open to the possibility of joy being there, even in the midst of great sorrow. So, alongside this moment of being commanded to be joyful, the sukkah itself, and I really experienced this because mine stood for about 5 minutes. The sukkah itself is a symbol of impermanence, and that's the whole idea behind it is to remind us of this impermanence of our lives. And we're literally asked to dwell inside of the sukkah. This can mean eating there, sleeping there, and to do that in the structures that we build. Now, when we say the blessing for being in the sukkah, we say these words, leshev basukkah. So we thank God for commanding us to sit inside of the sukkah. But we can also translate this, because we're sitting in this structure that tells us about impermanence. We can also translate this as thanking God for commanding us to dwell in impermanence, or to sit in impermanence. When we apply this to our meditation practice, we can think about the nature of our existence and all things as impermanent. The nature of each moment, each thought that passes. Nothing stays. Nothing stays anything. This is the central theme of Kohelet. And that's the scroll, of course, that we read during this holiday of Sukkot. And we can also think about the impermanent nature of our bodies. As we know, our bodies continue to change, some days allowing us to move in certain ways. Other days, our movements can be restricted. Some days, it's easy to sit in our physical selves, and some days it's more difficult. As we understand the nature of Sukkot, we thank God for allowing us to understand that the nature of all creation is impermanence. So today we're going to sit with these two ideas of joy on the one hand and inviting the guest of joy into our Sukkot and into our temporary structures of our physical bodies, and this idea of impermanence and bringing them together for ourselves. Joy is a guest in the home that is the body. So let's think about welcoming it when it shows up at our doors, but not demanding that it stay when it comes in as a guest. We can be gentle and kind to joy as it enters. Maybe offer a cup of tea to joy. And when joy takes its leave, making sure it knows that it's welcome back. So I'm going to invite you to find a comfortable way to sit in the body. And again, noticing what's showing up today on the cushion, on the chair. Taking a breath in, and as the breath leaves the body, just allowing a little bit of comfort to come in, a little bit of relaxation. You can allow the eyes to come to a resting spot, either a soft, gentle focus a couple feet in front of you, or allowing the eyes to completely come to a resting and closed position. As you continue to breathe, see if you can bring to mind an experience that brought you joy. And as you recall this experience, focus on the tone or the feeling within your body that the joy brings along with it. Do you feel joy in your gut? Perhaps a little bit of butterflies in the belly? Or do you notice that when joy enters, perhaps there's a slight curling of the lips into a smile when you remember a joyful experience? Checking in with your body and asking, where does joy reside? Wherever you find joy residing in the body, just take a moment to notice it, welcome it in. And without demanding that it stay, just recognizing its existence. As we sit today, we'll sit for a few minutes in silence, and as we sit, I'll invite you that anytime the mind wanders, just to come back to a memory of joy and notice how that expresses itself in the physical body. And as you experience other tones, other emotions, other feelings as the mind wanders, can you notice that feeling? Give it its due, say hello, and then politely excuse yourself and return to your guest, joy, residing in your smile or whatever part of your body you may find it. We're going to sit for 7 minutes in silence. And when we've completed our sitting with our invited guest of joy, I'm going to take us out of that silence with a song. Thank you, everyone, for your presence. I believe Josh is going to help us conclude today.
Thank you, Kerith, and thanks to Pete Seeger too. We will. I hope you can stay for conversation with Kerith and me, reflecting on practice and share questions and conversation in the chat. We'll do that in a moment. If you need to leave us, we wish you to take shalom, farewell, and join us again. Right now, we'll have a chance for those who are saying Kaddish to remember loved ones. If you would like to do so, you can, in the chat, enter the name of anyone you are holding in heart or mind today as we recite the Mourner's Kaddish, and the text, thank you to Rachel, is up on the screen, and you're welcome to unmute and join me in reciting Kaddish. Yitzgadal, Yitzgadash, Shemei Rabbah, Alma, Divra, Pirkei, V'Amrich, Malchutei, V'Chaye Chon, V'Yomei Chon, V'Chaye, B'Kol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, V'Lam Karu, Amen, Ye'ei Shemei Rabbah, Mevorach, V'Olam, V'Almei, and Maya. Yitbarach, V'Yishtachach, V'Yitpa'ar, V'Yitramam, V'Yitnaseh, V'Yithadar, V'Yit'aleh, V'Yit'alal, Shmei, Kedusha, B'Eila, Mikol, Birchata, V'Shirata, Tushbechata, V'Nechamata, V'Amiram, V'Alma, V'Imru, Amen. Hey, Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chaim, Aleinu, V'Al Yisrael, V'Imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Marav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'Al Yisrael, V'Al Yoshvei Tevel, V'Imru, Amen.
Amen.
Okay. There we go. Take care of the muting. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll bring Kerith back up. And I'm pretty sure I'm right that it was Pete Seeger who wrote the song, even though the Birds did popularize it. They have a better cover. Don't listen to the Pete Seeger recording. It's like really fast and it's like the tempo makes no sense, but he wrote the song.
There's some live Pete Seeger recordings that are beautiful. And also Pete's such a great guy. You got to give him his.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That you got to give him. And if you're going to do it right, you need to play it on the banjo, right? Not the
That's
guitar,
right.
but, you know.
That's right. And my open tuning was a nod to Joni Mitchell, so.
Okay. All right. And Rumi. And we'll throw in Rumi and
Kohelet.
And Kohelet. We've got all our ecumenical bases covered.
Yes.
So thank you so much. So there's so many places that we could start. I would love, as always in the chat, please, if you have questions, just to label them question in all caps helps us to see that. And we love for if you have observations to share them and people, want to respond to one another. That's always one of the best parts of the sit. And Kerith, thank you for sharing so honestly, candidly about your experience of building your sukkah this year.
Well, I appreciated my husband even more than usual because he builds me a glorious, gorgeous sukkah every year. So now I know it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah. So, but I think you offered us several sort of pathways into the sukkah, which is appropriate, which is a welcoming space. But thinking, with the help of Rumi, of the metaphor of ourselves as that sukkah and what we're bringing in and allowing to pass through and acknowledge the ushpizim, the guests basically that are here. And also, as Harris notes, also just pointing us towards joy, simcha, right, of grounding. I'd be curious for you when you gave us that invitation. I wonder where you went to. Like for you, what's an experience of joy that you find yourself grounding into these days?
Yeah. So I have some guests actually. My dear closest college friends have been staying with us on and they're using us as a base while they travel to some different places on the West Coast. They've been staying with us and it's been a really joyful time in my household for that reason. And we just did this hike together. And so my joy spot was like reaching the apex of our hike, just coming out of a wooded area into the sun. And just there was this kind of expansive feeling as I did that. So I came back to that
Mm,
place. It was like, so joy takes different forms, right? So this was kind of an excited, the tone for me was one of like my neurons kind of flashing, right? That kind of joy. Joy can be more understated as well, right? So there's different ways to experience it, but for me it was an excited,
mm,
um, really moving joy. Yeah.
mm. It's very sweet. I will admit the most recent experience that came to mind most recently was when I was rooting for the Detroit Tigers in the playoffs and when they were winning those games and they in these miraculous ways. And then I would be like, texting with my brother and my son and and everybody, and we'd be calling each other and sort of jumping up and down and so excited. So, also a more ecstatic type of
Yeah.
joy. But of course, there are quieter, as you say, there are quieter and deeper types of joy. Nancy here, I just saw here a lovely reflection of a friend, Leslie, who's in continued treatment for incurable cancer. She said that as long as there is joy in her life, she's going to keep doing what she can to stay here. She finds joy in small things and in the love and care around her. Wonderful teacher, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also part of the lesson here is, the Ezehu Asher Sameach Bechelko, right? Like the rich person is the one who has joy,
Right.
delights, simcha, right, in what we have. And that's also a Sukkot invitation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's especially, I love learning about joy from Nachman of Bratslav at this during what is what can be a difficult world to live in, right? Um, because we can feel almost sometimes, I think, ashamed of our joy, or like joy is inaccessible, or we shouldn't be allowed to be joyful when there's pain in the world. And or when our own hearts are full of pain, that sometimes we close ourselves off to joy intentionally, out of shame or for other reasons. And um, that's why I love turning to Nachman, because he did suffer, right? And so his prescription for joy is not one coming from a place of like, oh, well, I find it really easy to sit in joy all the time, so what's wrong with you? Right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is hard for me, and this is what I'm prescribing for myself, and I want you to come along on this journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels really really helpful to me. And someone's asking in the chat where the source for Rabbi Nachman is. It's from Likutei Moharan. It's part 2, 24:1 is where you can find that quote that I shared.
And I would add the two things. Number one is, Rabbi Nachman is also the author of the short saying Mitzvah Gedolah Liot B'Simcha, right? It's a
Yes.
great commandment to
Yeah.
always to be joyful, to be in a state of simcha. So just further underscoring your point. And one other, there are certainly plenty of books out there about Rebbe Nachman. There's a whole Breslov Institute actually that's online that they publish works of Rebbe Nachman, and you can also go to Safaria
Sure.
and just search, joy and Nachman, and you're going to
Yes.
get probably 3 dozen source sheets that people have prepared around the world. So
Yeah.
I would suggest that yeah we can type those in a second as well. So, some of it is just Googling. Just do your Googling. If Google will be your friend here. You can find it, but I'll try to um, put things in there as well. And I think the point about also is such an important point here is about that we can feel some guilt about our joy at a time when there's um, when there's suffering and when there's when so many of us are in pain, right? And how do we be in pain at the same how do we try to carry those at the same time? And Rabbi Nachman is such a teacher, for that. Yeah, I think that can be really, one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about joy a lot was in the Inside Out movies, the Pixar movies, where joy, is this character, right, with blue hair, and but the personification of joy and so many of the dynamics you're talking about, they're very wise movies, but the dynamics that you're talking about can really be um, are really pronounced in those. So that came to mind also.
Yeah.
Um,
I've only seen the first one. Maybe I should go see that
oh,
second
you got to see the second. Oh, the second one gets into anxiety and like, yeah, that's some really good stuff.
one.
Um, absolutely. Uh, yeah, and I'd be curious to hear from others also, uh, how you're holding this question of this joy in the midst of other kinds of heaviness, right? Yancy again says it seems like part of joy is its impermanence, those moments when we are filled up with a new awareness of beauty or love or connection, etc.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, that's we can only experience something if it were with us all the time. It would just be we wouldn't notice it, right? Um, we would take it for granted. But those things that come and go for us, um, we really can take the time to notice them. But I do think there is sometimes, and can be particularly in our circles, um, for people who are searching, um, a tendency to seek out the things that we label as positive or one of the things that I thought about talking about today was the idea of wanting to um, access revelation when we sit, but Sukkot teaches us about being protected by a covering. Okay, so so sometimes we're looking for these like bright, clear moments of like true, deep understanding and awareness, right? But we also need that protection sometimes, and then our access to joy and this idea of the impermanence of joy, I think also reflects that we have to we have to know that it can come back, but our tendency is to want to grasp it and make it not go away, and to be with that bright, shiny experience, um, and to have feelings of wanting to push away the more difficult experiences. And so, welcoming whatever the guest is, being with it, and letting it go when it's time to go. There are also instances where we might want to hold on to grief and sorrow, right? Um, and maybe that's a way of feeling close to someone who we've lost, and that letting go of that grief might be scary because it might feel like we're letting go of a person who we loved and lost. So the impermanence piece, I think when it comes to practice, a lot of it can come back to noticing self when we're grasping or clinging to something,
Mm.
and having the clarity to know that we can let go.
Yeah, which is also so interesting because the other mitzvah of this holiday, right, is the lulav behind me, right, which is about holding, right, and taking things together, but obviously holding them in a certain way that is not, um, yeah, well, holding them with appropriate pressure, right.
Yeah.
I think in, I think the Buddha talks about, holding a quail, right? Holding a bird, and the way that one would hold a bird. And I think so often I watch when people take their lulav not so mindfully. It's like it's amazing to me that I paid $55 I think for my lulav in that this year, right? Um, Pretty average price in Chicago, and but and I show up to shul and people are waving them, but not with a whole lot of intentionality. It's
Right.
just like, okay, we gotta get this thing out of the way, and we like shake it around, and there's a real invitation there to be aware of um, how we're holding, how we're connected, or yeah, in those motions. So another way that Sukkot speaks to this.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I can't remember this guy's name. He's a comedian, and he has on his social media, he has like these different he imitates different people and the way that they're shaking their lulavs. And it speaks very much to what you say. I'm the sniffer.
You're the
I want to hold on to that etrog and sniff that forever. So that's what I have to know when it's time. I can't carry that around for the full year. You need to know when it's time to set it down too.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm Yeah,
So,
which and that gets us to Shmini Atzeret, which is coming up, tomorrow night, and that after everything, right? There's a wonderful Hasidic teaching that I found in a couple of places. I think in the Shemi Shmuel, where he says, after all of Rosh Hashanah and Kippur and Sukkot and everything, right? Where do we get to? It's all preparation for the line that we recite at the beginning of Simchat Torah, taking out the Torah on Simchat Torah night. Atah harei taladat ki Adonai hu Elohim eino milvado, right? The line from Moses in Deuteronomy, um, that uh, that you should come to awareness, that you need to see and be aware that there is none other than God, and that there's no mitzvah associated with that. There's no lulav, there's no etrit, there's no shofar, there's no nothing, there's no fasting, right? It's just to be able to be in presence, and that's setting down or letting go in
yeah.
order to acquire.
Yeah. Well, that's when all the veils and the coverings are removed, right?
Mm,
And so and
yeah.
that's a true gift to be able to be granted a glimpse of that awareness.
Well, thank you for helping us, giving us one practice to help us with that
Thank
on the journey.
you.
And thank you to everybody for being here as part of our community today. And we'll be back tomorrow for one more sit during Sukkot, and then I'll be off for a couple of days, and we'll be back on Monday. So hope you can join us tomorrow. And Chag Sameach, and be well,
Moedim
everybody. Thanks so
uzmanim
much.
lesimcha.
Okay, thank you.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye.